Tess Holliday is featured on the cover of the wildly popular magazine Cosmo, and people lose their minds about it. Stay tuned, we'll talk all about it.
Well, whenever we cook inside, Mom always says to cook it. But whenever we cook outside, you always do it. How come?
Well, it's sort of traditional, I guess. They say a woman's place is in the home, and I suppose as long as she's in the home, she might as well be in the kitchen.
Welcome.
Good internet, what's good YouTube? You have tuned in internet television, and as always, I am your purveyor of debauchery. I am the ghoul who drools. I am Mr. X. Today we're talking about the topic melting down the internet. Today we're talking about Cosmopolitan's recent cover model and the photo shoot featuring a plus-size model. Strap in because there's a lot to talk about. So here we go. Tess Holliday, a 33-year-old, known for her modeling career as well as her forays into makeup artistry and even blogging, was predominantly featured on the cover of Cosmopolitan magazine for their October 2018 issue.
That's a huge bitch.
Well, as we can clearly see, she's, well...
Oh, wait. Was she a great big fat person?
Guys, I know Tess has probably caught the ire of the collective internet for attempting to challenge the status quo, but there's a lot at stake here.
Steak. Did you say steak?
All jokes aside, I firstly wanted to talk about the quote, body positivity or the so-called movement. Body positivity, generally speaking, is the belief that one's outward appearance does not necessarily dictate the individual's or one's own worthiness. This notion has been shown more applicable to females regarding their total endgame attractiveness, or the way they are perceived by society by an imaginary set of guidelines set forth by an evil, rigid, patriarchal society. In other words, there is a collective idea of what attractiveness is, and is formed by the collective societal belief. Over the years, these norms can be found in a multitude of mainstream media. This notion is delivered by all avenues of media. Print media, for example, often uses models that conform to the general idea of attractiveness. This notion can also be found in the age-old institution of Hollywood. The low-hanging fruit here is Marilyn Monroe.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
Marilyn Monroe was the epitome of beauty, sporting her sparkling blonde hair, long lashes, and curves for days. In many ways, Marilyn Monroe created the attractiveness archetype that would echo for decades. Even to this day, Marilyn Monroe is considered, quote, a classic beauty. Interestingly enough, the concept of beauty or the idea of fertility has changed over the years. For example, a statue found from the Paleolithic age suggests a starkly drastic opposition depiction of modern beauty. Ancient Greece has their own take on what constitutes beauty as well. The wise philosopher Plato takes credit for the quote, golden ratio, as the definitive quotient of attractiveness. The Greeks and Plato specifically found symmetry to be the most appealing when referring to human beauty. The early Renaissance ushered in an era where women were far less symbols of fertility but rather sexualized and lust objects. Fast forward to Americana 1920s. A cross-section of society, more specifically women, whom had entered the workforce considered themselves flappers. Flappers were independent women whom not only had the right to vote, but were also experiencing economic growth due to the wartime efforts. The ideal this time around was considerably more boyish, as curves and long feminine hairstyles were out. Over the years, however, the idea of the perfect body has changed. Modern beauty traits are those that are tall, athletic, and physically fit. It's an age-old adage, sex sells, but is there any validity to it? In today's hyper-economy, one that operates at the speed of light, sex has never quite lost its niche in its advertising game. For example, I won't comment on the quality of Paris Hilton's character, but we can watch this ad, which generated a massive amount of outrage due to its extreme nature. Carl's Jr., a subsidiary of their corporate overlords CKE Restaurants, didn't leave anything to the imagination with their Bentley ad. The restaurant took flack from Citizens Group and even some standards boards. After the dust settled though, it's difficult to attest to how successful the campaign was in dollars and cents. But ultimately the company saw a net gain overall. But was it Paris? Is it the food? Was it boobs? Another company that is historically notorious for marketing campaigns is Calvin Klein, an apparel company started in 1968 in New York. The culture warriors can clash over which sex has a higher propensity to use this tactic to their advantage and to which degree. But men have been objectified right along with women in order to gain awareness for a particular product.
It's 11:30.
It's 11:30.
It's 11:30.
Diet Coke break.
Diet Coke break.
Diet Coke break.
I don't want you to be no slave. I don't want you to work all day. You to be true, and I just wanna make love to you, love to you. Ooh,
Oh, that was great.
See you tomorrow.
11:30.
Love to you. Ooh.
God damn, Mr. X, get to the fucking point. What does this have to do with Tess and the cover?
My point is, attractiveness is singularly subjective. What might be attractive to one may be repulsive to the next. The models are, to an extent, human mannequins, or at a minimum, an approximation of the very best of humankind. In fact, the modeling industry took heaps of flack when their industry was found to foster not only drug abuse, but also eating disorders. The influence and reach of these industries, fashion and beauty, is tremendous, and the messages sent were highly scrutinized, as they should have been. Ultimately, I am no doctor, I am no lawyer, I'm just a rotting internet wise guy. But I can't agree with a movement that willfully and recklessly promotes placing folks into dangerous situations. This case reminds me of a reality television series, My 600 Pound Life. A series where morbidly obese patients are followed over the course of a year while they undergo bariatric surgery to aid in extreme weight loss. The patient's weight varies from 400 all the way up to 600 pounds and above. A vast majority of the patients not only need physical operation to aid in reducing caloric intake, but they also need psychiatric therapy to aid in mental stability and identify coping mechanisms besides eating. Often, these patients are unhappy and are treated for depression and other mood disorders. I admire Tessa's quote, "buck the system" mentality, but cannot condone it in this particular instance. Sadly, after the cover went live, in typical 2018 fashion, Tess received a tremendous amount of harassment and full-on hate mail. She was quoted as, "I just want to disappear." Personally, I say don't let Hollywood or any other large institutions tell you how to lead your life. Lead your life according to your own terms, not what you see on TV, hear on the radio, or consume on the internet. That is all the time that we have for internet television today. If you enjoyed today's episode, be like Kim Jong-un and nuke that like button. If you are intrigued and want to see more, consider subscribing. This has been Internet Television, and I have been Mr. X, and now I gotta go start working out.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is, as having sex with a woman and coming. So can you believe how much I am in heaven? I'm like getting the feeling of coming in the gym, I'm getting the feeling of coming at home, I'm getting the feeling of coming backstage when I pump up, when I pose out in front of 5,000 people, I get the same feeling. So I'm coming day and night.